The gavel slammed, echoing like a gunshot through the courtroom, but I didn't flinch. My heart pounded as I stared into the judge's cold eyes, his verdict ringing in my ears. Guilty. In that moment, I, Ethan Caldwell, a 25-year-old barista from Willow Creek, Oregon, felt the weight of a world that wasn't ready for me or for us. It started 6 months ago, in a town where whispers travel faster than truth. Willow Creek, population 8,000, was the kind of place where everyone knew your name but not your story. I'd grown up here, hiding who I was behind polite smiles and late-night shifts at the Rusty Mug, the local coffee shop. My life was quiet, predictable, until Javier Torres walked through the door, his warm brown eyes and easy laugh turning my world upside down. He was 28, a freelance photographer who'd moved from San Diego to capture the rugged beauty of the Pacific Northwest. One latte order turned into a conversation, then a date, then a love I hadn't known was possible. But Willow Creek wasn't ready for two men holding hands on Main Street. The trouble began with a single photo, a grainy snapshot of Javier and me kissing outside the shop, posted anonymously on the town's community board. The caption read, "This is what's wrong with our town." By morning, it had spread like wildfire. Dirty looks turned to slurs, then to threats scrawled on my apartment door. Javier's camera was stolen from his car, his tires slashed. We reported it to the police, but Sheriff Danvers, a man who'd known my family for decades, just shrugged. "Boys, you're stirring up trouble. Maybe keep it private." We didn't. We couldn't. Javier and I decided to fight back. Not with fists, but with presence. We walked together, laughed together, lived together. And when the town council proposed a decency ordinance to ban public displays of affection for same-sex couples, we showed up to the meeting. I'll never forget standing at the podium, my voice shaking as I said, "Love isn't a crime. You can't legislate who we are." The room was split, half jeering, half silent. That night, someone threw a brick through our window. The real storm hit when Pastor Reynolds, the town's moral compass, rallied a group to cleanse Willow Creek. They targeted the Rusty Mug, claiming it was a haven for sin because I worked there. My boss, Clara, a tough 60-year-old with a heart of gold, refused to fire me. So they boycotted her shop, picketing with signs that read, "God hates your choices." Clara's business tanked. She took out loans to keep it afloat, but the pressure was crushing. One night, I found her crying in the back room, receipts scattered like fallen leaves. "Ethan," she whispered, "I can't lose everything because of this." Guilt ate at me. Javier and I talked for hours, torn between leaving town or staying to fight. "If we run," he said, his voice steady, "they win, and I'm not letting them take you from me." His grotto, we stayed. Then came the arrest. It was a setup. Pastor Reynolds and his followers claimed I'd assaulted one of their members during a protest outside the shop. The truth? I'd pushed the guy away when he lunged at Javier. But in Willow Creek, truth didn't matter. The charges were flimsy, but the town wanted a spectacle. They got it. The trial was a circus. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, locals, and out-of-towners who'd caught wind of the story. Javier sat in the front row, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on me. The prosecution painted me as a violent deviant, twisting every detail of my life. My public defender, a young woman named Lylan Gwynn, fought hard, but the deck was stacked. The jury, all locals, barely looked at me. When I took the stand, I didn't hold back. "I'm not a criminal," I said, my voice rising. "I'm a man who loves another man. If that's a crime, then half this town is guilty of hating what they don't understand." The room erupted, some shouting, others murmuring. Javier's hand clenched the bench in front of him. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order. The verdict came fast. Guilty of misdemeanor assault. A 6-month probation sentence, but the real punishment was the public shaming. As the bailiff grabbed my arm, I looked at Javier, his face a mask of anguish. "I love you," I mouthed. Then I turned to the crowd, expecting their scorn. Instead, something extraordinary happened. A woman in the back stood, clapping slowly. Then another. A man joined in, then a group of teenagers. Soon half the room was on their feet, applauding. Not for my guilt, but for my words. The bailiff yanked me toward the door, but I heard them. The sound of strangers, allies, people I'd never met, standing for us. The courthouse steps were a blur as the bailiff hustled me outside, his grip like iron on my arm. The crowd followed, spilling onto the lawn, their voices a chaotic mix of cheers and jeers. Javier pushed through, his eyes fierce with determination. "Ethan, you're not alone," he shouted, but the bailiff shoved him back. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I knew it would only make things worse. The sun was blinding, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and tension. A news van screeched to a halt nearby, and cameras flashed like gunfire. They didn't take me far, just to a holding room in the county jail a block away. The cell was small, gray, and smelled of disinfectant. I sat on the hard bench, staring at the concrete floor, my mind replaying the courtroom. Those strangers clapping, why? I'd expected hatred, not support. My thoughts churned. Was it pity, solidarity, or just a moment of fleeting compassion? Javier's face haunted me. The way his hand shook when he reached for me, the way his voice cracked. I promised him we'd get through this, but now I wasn't sure. The decency ordinance was still on the table, and Pastor Reynolds was gaining traction. If they passed it, our lives in Willow Creek would be unlivable. I pressed my palms to my eyes, fighting the ache in my chest. An hour later, Lila, my lawyer, appeared at the cell door. Her sharp black suit was wrinkled, her eyes tired but bright. "You've got friends out there, Ethan," she said, sliding a stack of papers through the bars. "The press is eating this up. National outlets are calling it a civil rights case." I stared at the papers, news articles, blog posts, even a petition with thousands of signatures demanding the charges be dropped. "You're not just a local story anymore," she added. I shook my head. "Doesn't change the verdict." Lila leaned closer, her voice low. "It might. The judge is under pressure. And those people clapping, they're organizing a protest tonight. Javier's out there leading it." My heart lurched. Javier out there alone, facing a town that wanted us gone. Released on probation that evening, I found Javier outside the jail, surrounded by a small group of supporters. He ran to me, wrapping me in his arms, his breath warm against my neck. "We're not done," he whispered. The crowd was eclectic, college kids from Portland, a few locals, even an older couple holding a rainbow flag. Clara was there, too, her face lined with exhaustion but defiance. "I'm not letting my best barista rot," she said, squeezing my shoulder. That night, we gathered at the Rusty Mug, the shop's windows still boarded from the brick incident. The group planned a rally to challenge the ordinance. I was skeptical. Willow Creek wasn't known for change. But Javier's optimism was infectious. "People are listening, Ethan," he said, his hand in mine. "That courtroom proved it." The rally was set for the next weekend. We spent days preparing, making signs, contacting reporters, spreading the word online. Javier's photography skills came in handy. He posted images of us, our hands clasped, with captions about love and justice. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country, some hateful but many supportive. A queer advocacy group from Seattle offered legal help. A fundraiser covered Clara's loans. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. But the night before the rally, disaster struck. Javier's apartment was vandalized, windows smashed, walls spray-painted with slurs. We stood in the wreckage, his photos scattered across the floor. "They're scared," Javier said, picking up a torn picture of us. "This is their last stand." I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. What if this was just the beginning? The rally day dawned bright and cold. Hundreds gathered in the town square, far more than we'd expected. Javier and I stood on a makeshift stage, microphones trembling in our hands. I spoke first, my voice raw. "We're not criminals. We're your neighbors, your friends. We just want to live." The crowd roared, some waving signs that read, "Love wins." Javier followed, his words fierce. "You can't silence us. We're here and we're not leaving." Then a shout from the back. Pastor Reynolds and his followers stormed the square, their signs uglier, their voices louder. My stomach dropped as they pushed forward, fists raised. The police stood by, watching. I grabbed Javier's hand, bracing for the worst. Chaos erupted in the town square. Pastor Reynolds' group surged toward the stage, their shouts drowning out the rally's cheers. "Sinners!" they screamed, waving signs that twisted Bible verses into weapons. I tightened my grip on Javier's hand, my pulse racing. The police, stationed at the edges, did nothing, their faces blank. I scanned the crowd. Our supporters outnumbered the protesters, but the air crackled with violence. Javier stepped to the microphone, his voice steady despite the chaos. "This is our home," he said, his eyes locked on Reynolds. "You don't get to decide who belongs." A bottle flew from the crowd, shattering at his feet. Gasps rippled through our supporters. I pulled Javier back, but he stood firm, raising his chin. "We're not afraid." That's when Clara charged forward, climbing onto the stage with a megaphone. "Enough!" she bellowed, her voice cutting through the noise. "This is Willow Creek, not your personal crusade, Reynolds." The crowd quieted, stunned by her ferocity. She pointed at the pastor's group. "You've bullied my shop, my employee, my town. You're the ones who should leave." A cheer erupted from our side, and I saw a few of Reynolds' followers falter, their signs lowering. But it wasn't over. A man in a red cap lunged at the stage, swinging a fist at Javier. I shoved Javier aside, taking the blow to my shoulder. Pain shot through me, but I didn't fall. The crowd surged, our supporters pushing back, forming a human wall around us. A young woman, maybe 20, with pink hair and a rainbow pin, grabbed the man's arm, twisting it until he yelped. "Not today," she growled. The police finally moved in, pulling the man away, but their eyes were on us, not him. The rally dispersed under police orders, but the energy lingered. That night, Javier and I sat in Clara's shop, surrounded by a small group of allies. Lila, the lawyer, was there, scribbling notes. "This is bigger than Willow Creek now," she said. "The media's calling it a flashpoint. We've got a shot at overturning the verdict and the ordinance." I nodded, but my mind was on the man in the red cap. "They're not done," I said. Javier squeezed my knee. "Neither are we." The next morning, a national news outlet ran a story titled, "Small-Town Baristas Fight for Love Sparks Movement." My face was plastered across the internet, along with Javier's. Strangers sent messages of support, but the hate mail poured in too. One email, from an anonymous account, read, "You'll burn for this." I deleted it, but the words stuck. We planned a second rally, this time with security from a Portland activist group. The day before, Clara invited us to her house for dinner. Her wife, Marla, a quiet woman with a knack for baking, served us apple pie. "You boys are family," Clara said, her eyes misty. "This town's changing because of you." I wanted to believe her, but the vandalism, the trial, the redcap man, they felt like warnings. The second rally was massive. Over 1,000 people filled the square, their signs a sea of color. Javier and I spoke again, our voices stronger. "We're not asking for permission to exist," I said, the microphone amplifying my words. "We're demanding it." The crowd roared, and this time, Reynolds' group was smaller, their voices drowned out. A local council member, Elena Vasquez, joined us on stage, publicly opposing the ordinance. "Willow Creek is for everyone," she declared. The applause was deafening. But that night, as Javier and I walked home, a car screeched by, someone yelling slurs from the window. Javier pulled me close, his breath shaky. "They're losing," he whispered. I nodded, but the fear lingered. We were winning battles, but the war was far from over. The weeks after the second rally were a whirlwind. The national media descended on Willow Creek, turning our small town into a battleground for America's culture wars. Javier and I were invited to speak on a morning talk show in Portland. Sitting under bright studio lights, I felt exposed, but Javier's steady hand on mine kept me grounded. "We're just two guys who love each other," I told the host, my voice calm but firm. "We're not here to change the world, just to live in it." The audience applauded, and the clip went viral, amassing millions of views. Back home, the town council meeting to vote on the decency ordinance loomed. Lila worked tirelessly, gathering evidence that the ordinance violated state anti-discrimination laws. She uncovered records of Sheriff Danvers ignoring complaints from other queer residents, building a case for systemic bias. "This could go to federal court," she said, her eyes gleaming. "We're not just fighting for you, we're fighting for everyone." Clara's shop became our headquarters. Supporters flowed in, bringing food, signs, and stories. A trans teenager named Riley told us how our rallies gave them the courage to come out to their parents. An older gay couple from Eugene shared their decades-long struggle, their hands clasped tightly. "You're carrying the torch," one of them said, his voice thick. I felt the weight of their words, the responsibility of being a voice for so many. But the threats didn't stop. Javier's car was keyed with a slur, and anonymous letters arrived at our apartment, promising violence. One night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. A rock had been thrown through our bedroom window, a note tied to it, "Leave or else." Javier called the police, but they brushed it off as kids messing around. I saw the doubt in his eyes, but he smiled anyway. "We've got each other," he said, kissing my forehead. "That's enough." The council meeting was packed. Javier and I sat in the front row, our hands intertwined. Elena Vasquez presented our case, her voice commanding. "This ordinance isn't about decency, it's about discrimination," she said, citing Lila's evidence. Pastor Reynolds stood, his face red, shouting about traditional values. But the room wasn't with him. Dozens of residents, many I'd never met, spoke in our favor. A farmer named Tom, whose family I'd known my whole life, said, "Ethan's a good kid. Let him live." I choked back tears. The vote was close, 3-2 against the ordinance. Cheers erupted, but Reynolds stormed out, vowing to fight on. That night, Clara threw a party at the Rusty Mug. Music played, people danced, and Javier pulled me into a slow dance under the fairy lights. "We did it," he whispered, but I knew it wasn't over. The hate was still out there, waiting. The next morning, Lila called with news. The judge was reconsidering my verdict due to public pressure and new evidence of bias in the trial. "We're not out of the woods," she warned, "but we're close." Javier and I spent the day cleaning up our apartment, taping plastic over the broken window. As we worked, he stopped, holding up a photo of us from our first date. "This is worth fighting for," he said. I nodded, my heart full. But that night, as we slept, the fire started. Smoke filled the room, choking us awake. Javier grabbed my hand, pulling me through the flames. We stumbled outside, coughing, as sirens wailed in the distance. The apartment was engulfed, our lives reduced to ash. The police called it an accident, but I saw the truth in Javier's eyes. This was no accident. The fire left us with nothing but each other. We stood outside the smoldering ruins of our apartment, wrapped in blankets from the fire department, watching firefighters douse the last flames. Javier's arm was around me, his body trembling but his voice steady. "We're alive," he said, his breath visible in the cold night air. "That's what matters." I wanted to believe him, but the loss cut deep. Photos, clothes, Javier's camera, gone. Clara took us in, giving us her guest room. "Your family," she said, her voice fierce. "This is your home now." The police investigation was a dead end. "Faulty wiring," Sheriff Danvers claimed, but the look in his eyes told me he wasn't looking hard. Lila was furious. "This is arson," she said, pacing Clara's living room. She'd already contacted a private investigator, a friend from law school, to dig deeper. "We'll find proof," she promised. I nodded, but my hope was fading. The town was changing, but not fast enough. The community rallied around us. A crowdfunding campaign raised enough to replace our essentials, and strangers sent clothes, books, even a new camera for Javier. Riley, the trans teen, showed up with a handmade quilt, their shy smile warming my heart. "You guys are heroes," they said. I shook my head. I didn't feel like a hero, just a man trying to survive. Lila's investigator found something a week later. Traces of accelerant in the apartment's remains. It wasn't faulty wiring, it was deliberate. The news hit Willow Creek like a bomb. Protests erupted outside the sheriff's office, demanding a real investigation. Pastor Reynolds denied involvement, but his followers went quiet, their confidence shaken. The media pounced, and the story went national again. Gay couple's home burned in suspected hate crime. Javier and I moved forward, planning a third rally, this one focused on justice. We worked with Elena, Lila, and a growing network of activists. The square was packed again, thousands strong, their voices united. I spoke first, my voice raw but steady. "They tried to burn us out, but we're still here," I said. The crowd roared, and Javier's hand found mine, his grip strong. He took the microphone, his eyes blazing. "Hate doesn't win. Love does." The applause shook the ground. That night, we got a call from Lila. The judge had overturned my conviction, citing irregularities in the trial. I was free. Javier pulled me into his arms, tears streaming down his face. "It's over," he whispered, but I knew it wasn't. The arsonist was still out there, and Reynolds' influence lingered. Clara threw another party, this one bigger, with allies from across the state. Marla baked a cake with freedom written in icing. Elena announced a new town initiative to promote inclusivity, inspired by our fight. I felt a spark of hope, but the weight of the fire, the trial, the hate, it was heavy. Javier sensed it, pulling me outside under the stars. "We're building something bigger," he said, his voice soft. "A future where no one has to go through this." I kissed him, my heart aching with love. The next day, Lila's investigator found a lead. A gas can with fingerprints, hidden in a shed near Reynolds Church. The police couldn't ignore it this time. They arrested a man, a member of Reynolds' group, the same redcap guy from the rally. He confessed, claiming he acted alone, but I didn't believe it. Neither did Javier. "This goes deeper," he said, his jaw tight. "We vowed to keep fighting, for us and for everyone else." The arrest of the redcap man, whose name was Travis Holt, sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. He was charged with arson, but his confession felt too neat, like a piece of a larger puzzle. Javier and I sat in Clara's kitchen, poring over Lila's notes. "Reynolds is behind this," Javier said, his voice low. Lila nodded. "No proof yet, but we're digging." The investigator had found connections, phone records linking Travis to Reynolds' inner circle. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was a start. The town was divided. Some locals, like Tom the farmer, stood by us, attending community meetings to push for change. Others clung to Reynolds' rhetoric, their signs still littering Main Street. But the tide was turning. Elena's inclusivity initiative gained traction, with businesses displaying rainbow stickers in their windows. The rusty mug was packed again, Clara's smile brighter than ever. "You boys brought this town to life," she said, handing us coffee. We rebuilt slowly. The crowdfunding money helped us rent a new apartment, a small place with a view of the mountains. Javier hung his new photos on the walls, pictures of us, the rallies, the people who stood with us. "This is our story," he said, his arm around me. I nodded, but the fear lingered. Travis was in jail, but Reynolds was free, his sermons growing darker. Lila pushed for a federal investigation into the sheriff's department, citing their inaction. The media kept the pressure on, and a Department of Justice official contacted us, hinting at a broader probe into Willow Creek's handling of hate crimes. Felt like a victory, but a fragile one. Javier and I spoke at a Portland Pride event, our story drawing tears and cheers. "You're not alone," I told the crowd, my voice breaking. "We're fighting for all of us." A young man in the audience hugged us afterward, saying our courage helped him come out. It was a moment I'd never forget. The final blow came unexpectedly. A whistleblower from Reynolds' Church leaked emails showing he'd encouraged action against us. The DOJ moved in, arresting him for conspiracy. The news broke on a sunny morning, and Javier and I watched the report on Clara's TV, stunned. "It's really over," Javier whispered, his hand in mine. I shook my head. "Not over, but we're winning." Willow Creek changed. The ordinance was dead, the sheriff under scrutiny, and Reynolds' Church lost half its members. Elena became mayor, vowing to make the town a safe place for everyone. Javier and I got engaged in the town square, surrounded by friends, allies, and strangers who'd become family. Riley gave us a rainbow quilt, Clara cried, and Marla baked a cake. The ring on Javier's finger glinted in the sunlight, a promise of a future we'd fought for. Years later, we'd visit Willow Creek, now a haven for diversity. The rusty mug thrived, Clara and Marla at its helm. Riley, now a college student, ran an LGBT youth group. Tom's farm hosted pride picnics. Javier's photos hung in a local gallery, telling our story. As we stood in the square, hand in hand, I remembered the courtroom, the gavel, the verdict, the applause. They dragged me out like a criminal, but the room rose for us. and in that moment we knew love had won.